Okay, hey DBC, welcome to just another segment of our marriage moments. Hope you're doing well, hope you're doing healthy. We've been really excited about regathering as a church for the past couple of weeks. It's been really encouraging to us as your staff, and I know encouraging to those of you who have been attending. And so we're excited to get to see people here in our facility and on our campus. So that's awesome. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're healthy, and we're praying for you. And we continue to do that on a weekly basis. And we're excited just to be back, kind of in the groove with doing our marriage moments videos on a weekly basis. And our focus today is really coming from our Regathering Pulse survey that we did several weeks ago, where close to 200 of you responded, and about 60+% of you responded to some of our questions, just dealing with what are you struggling with right now? How is life right now? And more than 60% of you talked about loneliness, you talked about isolation, and you talked about just the difficult issues in our culture around us, the unrest with a lot of the things happening in our culture, just the unrest in politics, you name it, and it's all there. The unrest with pandemic and COVID and going back to school or staying virtual. Yeah. There's just all kinds of things going on. And so we want to address that. We want to talk a little bit about that. I'm joined again with my friend, Dr. Stephen Lytle from Sparrow House Counseling. And Dr. Lytle, we are so excited that you're partnering with us and that you're doing this with us. So welcome, Dr. Lytle. Glad that you're back here with us.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to just start with just some of the things that we heard from the survey, and in the context of marriage, okay, is what we're talking about here. And you know, Dr. Lytle, a lot of folks talked about this deal of isolation and loneliness that they're experiencing in their marriage. Okay, so now I know that's big. I mean, that is so broad.
Yeah.
But can you just speak to, you know, hey, here are some things to be looking for when you're sensing either yourself or your spouse is slipping into this mode of isolation and loneliness, and just what to look for, how to address it in a way that's healthy. Can you speak to that for a little bit?
Yeah, Brian, that's a great question to talk about, because one of the things we've noticed in particular during this pandemic is just the increase in feelings of isolation, married or not. In particular, in the context of marriage, we have couples who are complaining about just feeling more and more disconnected from their spouse. And from that, feeling more and more isolated. And what we've discovered is that this pandemic is really magnifying what's already there. If there's a disconnect in marriage, if a husband and wife start off pretty connected, over time there can be what's called a disconnect. They grow apart from each other. Whether it's, you know, we have to go to work, we have to pay bills, we're raising kids, there's things that take our time and energy away from focusing on the relationship. And the more disconnected you get from each other, the more isolated you feel, the more lonely you feel. And during this pandemic, husbands and wives are spending more time together because for the most part, not always, but for the most part, they're at home together. But what's happened is they're around each other more, but they're not closer to each other. They've become more disconnected over time. And so the things that have taken away from the focus on the marriage, raising kids, doing homework, paying bills, going to work, those distractions are still there, but they're not there as much because you're actually home around each other more, but you're not closer to each other. And so that feeling of disconnection is much more prevalent. And so from that, people feel more and more isolated. And what we've discovered is that loneliness Without a relationship, there are feelings of loneliness. But what people have, what we've experienced in regards to marriage is that feeling of loneliness is there, but what's been added is a feeling of rejection, because I'm around you all the time now, but I don't feel any closer to you. And so there's an inherent feeling of rejection that's taken place. So, couples, when we're working with the couples in counseling, whether it's in our offices or over Zoom, it's really trying to reconcile the brokenness that's been in the marriage all along, but hasn't been focused on. And now, because there's not as many distractions, or you're spending more time together, so you don't notice the distractions that were there before. You notice more the loneliness, more the rejection, the feelings that are there. We're really trying to help couples focus on fixing and mending the brokenness that was in the relationship to begin with, or that's developed over time, that's really never been addressed.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. So, what's one like baby step, okay, that you could say to couples that are maybe either in that zone that you just talked about, that disconnected phase? They're around each other a whole lot, but they're not close. They're going this direction. So, just one piece of advice or just a baby step that you could say, hey, try this to begin closing that gap, back to drawing closer to one another.
Yeah, Brian, I love the term baby step, because there's a lot of little baby steps that lead couples back to this. Couples come in all the time and they're trying to find the root cause of the brokenness in the relationship. And many times there's not one root cause. There's a lot of different breaks that have caused this overall conception of brokenness in marriage. And I think the most important thing to do is first just identify the loneliness, identify the disconnect in the marriage, that we need to both address this. And so we need to first and foremost bring it out into the open. We need to both, as a husband and wife, be able to verbalize, hey, this is not where we want to be. We didn't start off our marriage like this. We started off our marriage more connected. In fact, we chose to get married because we felt more connected to each other. But slowly over time, there's become more and more of a disconnect. And so the first thing to do is just recognize, hey, this is where we are. We need to recognize it and talk about it. And then, Brian, I think probably the most important thing you can do after the recognition of the brokenness and the disconnect that's there in the relationship is set time together. We always, in particular as believers, we preach from the pulpit in church, hey, the importance of marriage. Marriage is the foundation that's built on the rock of Jesus that you build the family off of. And so it's important to focus on the marriage. And how do we do that? You date. You go back to what you did in the very beginning, is you spend time dating each other. Just as important as dating is making time for each other. And when you make time for each other to sit and talk, sit to enjoy each other, you'll see a mending start to take place. So recognize what's going on and then set time to spend time together. We tend to get in these rituals or habits. One spouse or both spouses go to work, come home from work. We're preparing meals, we're having the kids sit down, we're doing homework, bath, and then bed. And so we get these rituals, and the pandemic has completely blown that up. And in some senses, that's a good thing, because what we thought has worked for us before has actually caused some brokenness because we're not turning towards each other. Well, now we have more time to turn towards each other. So recognize that there's brokenness there, that there's a disconnect in the marriage. And then let's make time together a priority. Dating, 15 minutes on a couch at night, breakfast together, coffee together as a husband and wife, doing quiet time together as a husband and wife, just spending time together is so important right now.
Yeah, that's so good. That's awesome. I love the intentionality in that, and that's what it takes, and recognizing that. So So suppressing it is not a good thing. So you identify that separation a little bit. You recognize it. You own it. You get it out
Yeah.
there, and then you start to take those baby steps that we talked about.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so
Well, and you find,
yeah,
Brian,
go
well, I was
ahead.
going to say, you find, when you start to take those steps together, you start to reconnect with some of the ways that you used to become intimate with each other. Just spending time talking with each other. And there's different types of intimacy. There's emotional intimacy, there's social intimacy, there's physical intimacy, sexual intimacy, spiritual intimacy. And if you are intentional about setting time apart for each other, some of those aspects of intimacy, those types of intimacy will naturally start to come back together, because that's what brought you together in the first place. And it is like riding a bike. You don't forget.